The civilizing process is constantly moving forward. Norbert Elias, 1897–1990. As nations stabilized in the West after the 1500s, power was centralized and became the preserve of a small number of people. These people were no longer revered for their physical strength, but for their social standing, reflected in their courtly manners. To be identified with power, people are encouraged to display the same civilized behavior as a nation's governing elite. People, and nations, lacking the right behavior are seen as inferior and need civilizing into following the rules of the powerful. To shed light on the West's centralization of national power and increasing global domination over the last 500 years, Norbert Elias turned his attention to the psychical process of civilization, the changes in behavior, feeling, and intentions of people in the West since the Middle Ages. He describes these changes, and the effect they have had on individuals, in his famous book The Civilizing Process. Elias draws on history, sociology, and psychoanalysis to conclude that the way in which Western society believes itself to be superior to others is summed up by the concept of civilization. This is both historical and contemporary, and can refer to all sorts of facts about nations, from general ones such as lifestyles, values, customs, and religions, to personal ones such as levels of bodily hygiene, ways of preparing food, and so on. In every case, Western society stresses that its version is the standard against which all others should be judged. The rise of manners. Elias studied etiquette books and found that a transformation in attitudes toward bodily behaviors was key to this sense of civilization. Westerners had gradually changed their ideas of what was acceptable in terms of facial expressions, control of bodily functions, general deportment, and so on. Behaviors considered normal in the Middle Ages were thought barbarous by the 19th century. These minor changes resulted in the formation of a courtly class, identifiable by its highly codified manners and disciplined way of living. Warrior knights became quiet courtiers, expressing restraint and the maintaining strict control of impulses and emotions. Civilized behaviors soon became essential to everyone wishing to trade and socialize with others, from tradesmen to noblemen and women. Elias says that the process spread ever more widely from the 1500s onward, because good manners help people get along more peaceably, and growing towns and cities require such cooperation. The process, he said, at some point became a question of internalizing the social rules of one's parents, rather than one's betters. However, the rules about what constitutes good manners have always been dictated by the upper classes, so civilization continues to work toward furthering the interests of the powerful elite. Elias saw the transformation of manners as an important part of the centralization of power within Western nations, and a sign of the growing interdependency of people during urbanization. But it was also important in colonization during Elias's lifetime. He was writing during the 1930s, when colonial powers such as Britain and France, secure in their sense of national self-consciousness, justified the morality of colonization by claiming it brought civilization, which would be a good for colonized peoples. Norbert Elias. Norbert Elias was born in Breslau, now the Polish city of Wrocław, in 1897, to a wealthy Jewish family. After leaving school he served in the German army during World War I. Elias studied philosophy and medicine at Breslau University, gaining a PhD in philosophy in 1924. He then studied sociology with Max Weber's younger brother, Alfred, at Heidelberg, Germany, before moving to Frankfurt University to work with Karl Mannheim. In 1933 Elias went into exile in Paris and then London, where he finished The Civilizing Process. In 1939 the book was published in Switzerland, but sank into oblivion until its republication in West Germany in 1969. A sought-after lecturer, Elias spent his final years traveling in Europe and Africa. Key works: 1939 The Civilizing Process, 3 volumes, 1939 The Society of Individuals, 1970 What is Sociology? In context. Focus: The Civilizing Process. Key dates. c. 1500 Feudalism in Western Europe comes to an end and court society emerges. 1690 English philosopher John Locke describes civil society as a united body of individuals under the power of an executive. 1850s Auguste Comte asks how the individual can be both a cause and consequence of society. 1958 Max Weber says values and beliefs can cause dramatic change in the social structure. 1962 U.S. anthropologist Robert Redfield says that civilization is a totality of great and little traditions. 1970s Antonio Gramsci says the ruling classes maintain their dominance through the institutions of civil society.